Welcome to the fourth section of our video. There will be no random facts at the beginning of this section, I promise. Instead, we'll jump right in. This quote by Don Norman sums up perfectly why the double diamond was designed as it is right now. In the first half of the double diamond, we do our research. We find out what the problems are worth solving, and that's the part we'll be looking at right now in this video. We structure those insights in a tangible way so that it can be used throughout the rest of the product development. And then we diverge again, looking for possible solutions. Only at the end, we narrow down to our final design. In the video you're watching right now, we'll make sure to design the right thing. In the first quarter of the double diamond, you've done your research and you'll end up with a ton of insights. Now here is what you do with the plethora of that knowledge. First, again, yes, you prioritize. Ask yourself, what is the most critical aspect that you found in your research? Try to remove as much until you're left with the MVP. Now, if you don't know the term MVP, what is that? Generally speaking, it can be described as the minimal set of features that can be deployed to make a product barely usable, nothing more. Now, I know that this isn't the original meaning, but in reality, it more often than not boils down to that. There is nothing inherently wrong with prioritizing the most important features and shipping them early, but if you're not careful, you'll end up with a stripped down version of what your product could have been. What are the good parts of an MVP? Well, you focus down on the most important things and you get a lot of speed out of just doing the bare minimum you have to do. And this, it looks like you get a great value for your money. This doesn't have to be true because it's often mistaken for a minimal product. Viable, in its original meaning, includes that others like to use it, but in reality, this mostly gets overlooked. Now, if all you build is consecutive MVPs and never take the time to flesh out those features, you'll end up with the maximum unrelatable product in the end. And nobody wants that. My last rant has to do with its origins. It comes from a fail fast, fail often mentality. Yes, that gives you speed, and yes, it might work. But think of this. The user is your tester or your guinea pig. Turn it around. If you're the user, how would you feel if you know that what you get and what you pay for is just the minimal possible effort they could do? Wouldn't you ask for more? More attention to details, more love for the product, more respect of your time and your money? Now, this is where the MLP comes in. Humans don't strive for viable. We want something enjoyable. Think of the most boring task you've got at work. Maybe something as simple as starting up your computer or logging your time in the timesheets. Now, a viable option would be to press the button, have a blank startup screen, and once it's started up, you have the login screen with 2 boxes. That works, that's technically viable, but it's not enjoyable. Or we could do something fun. We could have a nice picture, for example, and then greet them with a message like, "Hello Tim, nice to have you back." Or we could let them know that we appreciate the hard work they put into the company when they log in their hours at the end of a strenuous day. Of course, the boring way is functional viable, but it's also totally interchangeable. When you think of an MVP or an MLP, there is such a thing called the design pyramid. You might have heard about the Maslow hierarchy of needs. There is a similar pyramid for design, and it consists of these layers. Functional works as programmed, it's reliable, it's available and accurate, it's usable, meaning it can be used, it is convenient, it is simple to use, and the top of the pyramid is pleasurable. It was fun to use and a memorable experience. That is where we want to go. Your goal is to make a product your users are delighted about, not just a usable thing. So slice it from top to bottom, not on a layer, but make sure that you have a little bit of everything in every release that you push out. By the way, you don't have to rename MVP to MLP in your company, because MVP is a well-established term. But it's your duty to educate your product owner so the iterations that he plans are sliced in the right way. Another example of an MVP versus an MLP is this one. We've got a cake that is obviously fine, you can eat it. And then you have a cupcake with icing on top and chocolate chips and stuff. Yes. Which one would you prefer? It's obvious, right? Same goes for products. The next step that I want to tap into are value propositions. It is a great tool to formulate what we offer. Think of it that way. What does your product bring to the table? If you take it away from the user, what is it? Like, what situation or what moment would they think, I wish I had the digital shopping assistant? That is your value proposition. There is a tool called Value Proposition Canvas that you can use in your workshops. And the idea is to gather the gains, the pains, and the core functions that our product offers. Then you compare the values that we offer to our characters' pains, desires, and the jobs to be done. Now, we can't do this in this exercise yet, because this is where you need research from the first double diamond phase. Or otherwise, wham! You run into assumptions. So we'll cover that later on, but for now, that's fine. We'll just stick to the value propositions, right? Once you figured out what it is that you offer, go validate those assumptions. It's important to talk to the users and make this as simple as possible. And this is where the hallway tests come into play. And this is so important. Once you've got your value propositions, go and test and validate them. This can be with colleagues or with customers, or depending on your target audience, you can even take strangers from down on the street. But just get creative, get out of your office, get out of the workshop room, and speak to people, propose your values, and see how they react to it. When you're doing this, you want to ask questions about if they currently have a problem that matches your solution, what they like and dislike about your solution. Let them tell you about the situations, the environment they would use your product in. When interviewing your users, make sure to ask them if the problem you're trying to solve exists and what they like and dislike about your solution for it. And let them tell you as much about the situation where they would use your product in. It's really important to learn as much about the environment as possible, because this is crucial insight and it will distinguish your product from your competitors. Also, ask them about critical parts to your solution. This can be conceptually or technically or maybe environmentally. Just ask them if there are any restraints that would prevent them from using your app. Sometimes they already have other apps that solve their problem. Ask them about them, because then you know what you have to look at. And ask them about the money they would be willing to spend or they're already spending for this type of application. Last, you can ask them how excited they would be to use your product. This is sort of a NPS score, if you know what that is. If they are very excited, ask them if you can contact them for further tests and questions. Build a list of possible early adopters that you can contact if the need arises. This is always a good idea. And be polite, thank them for their time, and maybe even hand them over a small present. Right, after you've tested your assumptions and they prove to be valid, The next step, once you've validated your value propositions and you know you've got something people are willing to pay for, is to formulate how might we questions. Because you've done a lot of research now and probably most of it is just present in your head. We need a way to synthesize this into a form that we can easily digest and remember later in our product cycle. These how might we questions are a great tool for this. You basically rephrase your value propositions as questions by adding how might we at the beginning. For example, how might we only show them fashion styles that fit their personal style? A good HMW question is open enough to allow for more than one solutions. If you formulate it and only one solution pops up in your mind, then your question is probably too narrow. If your question is too open, on the other hand, you won't know what you're trying to design in a couple weeks from now. It should provide you with a precise idea where to start your brainstorming without limiting possible crazy solutions. Yeah, I know, it's tricky, but after you've used them once or twice, you'll find out what works for you. They're not that hard. Okay, time to sum up this video. I know some of these concepts can be a bit hard to wrap your head around at first. I hope you could follow along nicely, as these methods and concepts in the second phase are the crucial bond between your early research and the whole development process following till the end.